Football is a sport where many families and friends all across the world come together to watch. It's a sport that requires a lot of emotions and feelings, and this could be a good or a bad thing depending on whether or not your favorite team wins or loses. Today I will be informing you about the history and the different generations of the National Football League. The National Football League, or NFL for short, is one of the most popular programs for all football fans throughout the world. On average, there are 16 million viewers per game, according to NBC. The first version of football is not like the version of football we know today. It started out on November 12, 1892, and this version of football was more like a rugby type of sport. Eventually, they decided to change rules, and it actually grew very popular throughout America. At first, though, there were only college teams and not a professional league quite yet. This wasn't until 1920 when the American Professional Football Association was created. It started out with 14 teams. 2 years later, though, they decided to change the name to National Football League, and it has remained the same since. Throughout the 1920s, though, the NFL stayed very inconsistent. Many teams came and left the league and changed different locations, and it was very inconsistent at the time. Then, in 1932, the NFL decided to create the first ever championship. This was kind of like the Super Bowl, but a little different. It was just a competition at the end of the year to get the two best teams to battle out and see who was the best team that year. For the next 30 years, though, the NFL remained very inconsistent with the same thing going on as it did in the 1920s. The teams came and left and changed different locations, and it was just kind of a mess at the time. Then, in 1960, a new football association was created. This was called the American Football League. It happened because some of the owners in the NFL were not allowed to expand their franchise. Because of this, they decided to start a new league, and this was called the American Football League. And it rivaled the National Football League for a few years. Now, at first, though, it wasn't very that popular until 1966, when people actually started watching and they realized that there was a lot of competitive games going on. The NFL then realized this, and they decided to have a competition in 1967. This competition was known as the Super Bowl. The two best teams out of each league would come out and play against each other. This became very popular, and then within the next 3 years, the NFL decided to merge with the AFL. Eventually, they became one league, but still kept the same tradition as they did before, and had a Super Bowl at the end of every season. This still remains till today. In conclusion, though, the NFL's rich and deep history is what makes it what it is today, and millions of people all across the world enjoy to watch it because of this. And it's very important for people who like to watch sports or are fans of sports to understand, not only for football, but every sport, is that the history is always important because it makes it so much more interesting to watch.